Before we can calculate the correct birth of Christ, we need to understand the biblical calendar months. I will only explain the first month of the year in this video, as that is our starting point, and important for the rest of this study. Let's see what we are told in the scriptures. Exodus chapter 12 verse 2 to 3 and 11. This month shall be unto you the beginning of months, it shall be the first month of the year to you. In the 10th day of this month they shall take to them every man a lamb, according to the house of their fathers, a lamb for an house, and ye shall eat it in haste, it is the Lord's Passover. Esther chapter 3 verse 7. In the first month, that is, the month Nisan. To the 12th month, that is, the month Adar. Exodus chapter 13 verse 3 to 4. And Moses said unto the people, Remember this day, in which ye came out from Egypt, out of the house of bondage, for by strength of hand the Lord brought you out from this place, there shall no leavened bread be eaten. This day came ye out in the month Abib. In the Septuagint we read in Exodus chapter 13 verse 3 to 4. And Moses said to the people, Remember this day, in which ye came forth out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of bondage, for with a strong hand the Lord brought you forth thence, and leaven shall not be eaten. For on this day ye go forth in the month of new corn. Deuteronomy chapter 16 verse 1. Observe the month of new corn, and thou shalt sacrifice the Passover to the Lord thy God, because in the month of new corn thou camest out of Egypt by night. So, now that we know the month God declared as the first month of the year, we will move on to calculating the birth of John the Baptist. To be able to count his birth, we need to look into some verses that describes his father Zacharias' temple ministration. Luke chapter 1 verse 5. There was in the days of Herod, the king of Judea, a certain priest named Zacharias, of the course of Abijah, and his wife was of the daughters of Aaron, and her name was Elizabeth. So we see that John the Baptist's father Zacharias was under the order or division of Abijah in the Levitical priesthood. And that order was the 8th out of 24 divisions. 1 Chronicles chapter 24 verse 10. The 7th to Hakaz, the 8th to Abijah. All the divisions served for 7 days beginning on the Sabbath. 2 Chronicles chapter 23 verse 8. So the Levites and all Judah did according to all things that Jehoiada the priest had commanded, and took every man his men that were to come in on the Sabbath, with them that were to go out on the Sabbath, for Jehoiada the priest dismissed not the courses. 1 Chronicles chapter 9 verse 25. And their brethren, which were in their villages, were to come after 7 days from time to time with them. All the divisions served during the festivals of unleavened bread, Pentecost, and Tabernacles. Deuteronomy chapter 16 verse 16. 3 times in a year shall all thy males appear before the Lord thy God in the place which he shall choose, in the feast of unleavened bread, and in the feast of weeks, and in the feast of tabernacles, and they shall not appear before the Lord empty. Notes. Unleavened bread are the 15th to 21st of the first month Nisan. Pentecost are the 6th of the third month Sivan. The weeks of the festivals where all the divisions served was not counted as the division's individual weeks. And therefore Abijah's division was serving the 2nd week of Sivan, beginning on the Sabbath, the 10th week of the year, as those 2 feasts adds up to 2 weeks since the beginning of the year. While Zacharias served his ministration in the temple, there appeared an angel to him, telling him that his wife Elizabeth would bear him a son called John. Luke chapter 1 verse 13. But the angel said unto him, Fear not, Zacharias, for thy prayer is heard, and thy wife Elizabeth shall bear thee a son, and thou shalt call his name John. After Zacharias' ministration service, he went home and Elizabeth conceived, just as the angel had told him. Luke chapter 1 verse 23 to 24. And it came to pass, that, as soon as the days of his ministration were accomplished, he departed to his own house. And after those days his wife Elizabeth conceived, and hid herself 5 months. As it states, after those days. Then we must assume that Elizabeth became pregnant just after Zacharias came home. So we read before in Luke 1 verse 24, that Elizabeth conceived John and hid herself 5 months. At the 6th month of Elizabeth's pregnancy, the angel appeared to Mary telling her about Jesus. Luke chapter 1 verse 26 to 27. And in the 6th month the angel Gabriel was sent from God unto a city of Galilee, named Nazareth, to a virgin espoused to a man whose name was Joseph, of the house of David, and the virgin's name was Mary. Note that verse 26 above refers to the 6th month of Elizabeth's pregnancy, not the 6th month of the year, which we are also told in this verse. Luke chapter 1 verse 36. And, behold, thy cousin Elizabeth, she hath also conceived a son in her old age, and this is the 6th month with her, who was called barren. So we can conclude from this that Mary became pregnant with Jesus 6 months after Elizabeth became pregnant with John the Baptist. So to sum up, we know that Elizabeth conceived after Zacharias came home from his ministration in the temple. He was there from the 6th of Sivan, which were Pentecost, and began his normal ministration from the Sabbath on the 7th and 7 days ahead, so he would have finished that on the 14th of Sivan. And then returned home where Elizabeth conceived. So adding around 9 months to when Elizabeth conceived, John the Baptist would have been born around Passover the 14th of Nisan, which is March or April on the Gregorian calendar we use today. Now that we know the birth of John the Baptist, and we know that Mary conceived Jesus 6 months later, we can then add another 6 months from John the Baptist's birth to the birth of Jesus, which will take us to the month Tishri, which is September, October on the Gregorian calendar. And it is interesting, as when John the Baptist was born around Passover 14 or 15th of Nisan the first month, at the first festival of the year, then Jesus was born around the Feast of Tabernacles the 15th of Tishri the 7th month, which is the Feast of Tabernacles, that are the last festival of the biblical year. An interesting side note about John the Baptist's birth, are that Malachi prophesied about John being the coming Elijah. Malachi chapter 4 verse 5. And, behold, I will send to you Elias the Tishbite, before the great and glorious day of the Lord comes. Jesus said in Matthew chapter 17 verse 10 to 13. And his disciples asked him, saying, Why then say the scribes that Elias must first come? And Jesus answered and said unto them, Elias truly shall first come, and restore all things. But I say unto you, that Elias is come already, and they knew him not, but have done unto him whatsoever they listed. Likewise shall also the Son of Man suffer of them. Then the disciples understood that he spake unto them of John the Baptist. The angel that appeared to Zacharias at his temple ministration said, Luke 1 verse 17. And he shall go before him in the spirit and power of Elias, to turn the hearts of the fathers to the children, and the disobedient to the wisdom of the just, to make ready a people prepared for the Lord. Another interesting thing, even its Orthodox Jewish tradition, is that they put out a cup of wine at their Seder meal for the arrival of Elijah, which we can read on Britannica. Isaiah chapter 7 verse 14. Therefore the Lord himself shall give you a sign, behold, a virgin shall conceive, and bear a son, and shall call his name Emmanuel. Emmanuel means, God with us. Like in, he was made flesh and had come to dwell or to tabernacle with his people on earth. John chapter 1 verse 14. And the Word was made flesh, and dwelt among us, and we beheld his glory, the glory as of the only begotten of the Father, full of grace and truth. The word dwelt or to dwell is called sukkah in Hebrew. We can look at a quote from the website News Times. The Feast of Tabernacles is also called Booths, or in Hebrew, Sukkot. Leviticus chapter 23 verse 42. Ye shall dwell in booths 7 days, all that are Israelites born shall dwell in booths. John chapter 7 verse 2. Now the Jews' Feast of Tabernacles was at hand. Sukkot lasts 1 week, It's a week of rejoicing, where people of all Israel would come up to Jerusalem for that week to celebrate and rejoice. So the whole area would have been pretty packed even outside of town. And when you think about it, that makes up a good reason for why there was no room in the inns for Joseph and Mary.